Déjame decir ya, el que habló fue el de Igual, quiere dejar la casa, quiere que hables con él.
Okay, Bobby, tell me about your life as a child, what you remember.
Well,
As a child in Russia.
Well, in child in Russia, I cannot remember anything because when we left Russia, I was about, let's say, 9 months or 10 months old. There's no way for me to remember anything. We came to Veracruz, according to what I was told, in the beginning of October of 1924. So I don't have any recollections from Gomel. The only thing I know was I was told. That's all I know.
Yeah.
And in Mexico, well, as far as I remember, we came to Veracruz. At that time, no relatives at all. From Veracruz, we took the train to Mexico City. And after a couple of weeks, my father with the family, we moved to Tacubaya. Tacubaya is like a little, now it's a big place, but it used to be like a neighborhood surrounding Mexico City. And my father came with money because my uncles, my mother's brothers, sent money. So according to the standards at that time, he was rich because he had dollars. I can explain you the requisite to, at that time, to coming to Mexico was show that each family had $100 to show that he's going to be independent. So he was able to show money for some other people that came with nothing. So he was rich at that time. And when everybody was a peddler, he had already like a little booth in the different markets in Mexico. But you know, my father wasn't exactly a businessman. He used to be a people's mensch. Help this and help that and help that. So his business didn't prosper the way they were supposed to be because he had a good foundation. So that later on, life was not exactly very easy. In the beginning, we lived in different houses. The nicest house I remember was one on Tacubaya, on Vicente Guerrero. Was a 2-story house, a beautiful house with a yard, and we had maids. So we were, according to the standards at that time, pretty good. But after that, my father started to travel and selling like alcohol or wine to different stores in little towns around Mexico. He used to travel a lot and come to the home, the beginning once a week, then once a month. Then when he continued traveling, he used to travel far away, so he used to come just for Yontif or Rosh Hashanah or Pesach. So most of the time we were with my mother. Not exactly swimming in money.
But getting back to Russia, what did Zayda do in Russia?
He came from a wealthy family. They had a shoe factory.
In Gomel?
In Gomel. The one that directed the factory was my Babi, because the Zayda was all the time in shul. He was praying a lot. So she was the one that directed the place. But my father was like a little like, not exactly a Jewish boy. He used to be working as a bombero, ¿cómo se dice?
Fireman.
Fireman.
In Russia?
In Gomel, yeah. Then he met my mother because my grandmother, with her family, they came from Lithuania because they had a pogrom in Lithuania, so they left. My grandmother was married at that time to Rabbi Eliashev, and he was a very well-known rabbi at that time, a Kabbalist. So he went to the same shul where my grandfather was praying. I'm sure they met, and this is the way the shidduch of my father and my mother, they got married. Dime.
Did you want to leave?
No,
Si quieres, ojalá esto.
Sí,
¿Así
sí,
está bien?
no, si quieren, pues puedo pasar a ver unas cositas o lo que sea.
Pues espérate un rato, luego salimos, ¿no?
Bueno, está bien.
Okay.
Okay, tell me about Zayda's family. He had,
Well, he had, of course, his parents, about 4 or 5 brothers and 1 sister. This all I know.
as far as you know, there's 2 brothers that are alive.
Yeah,
What
one
do we know
lives
about lives
in Calgary.
Calgary.
And
I
his
met
name
his
is
wife.
Bill.
I met his wife
You met his wife, right?
at Joseph's wedding.
Yes,
But
but this is his second wife.
the second one.
Yes.
Okay.
And the other one, I don't know where he
And
lives.
he's never said,
No.
even though he has said there's another brother.
This is what he said when I start asking questions. He said, "What do you want to know?" And he gets mad.
When's the last time you talked to him?
It's sad to say, maybe about a year or something. I haven't talked to him again. That's all. I never met him. He went to Mexico.
Tio Label's met. Well, of course.
Tio Lebo visited I think his shop. He has a store in downtown Calgary.
Does he have children?
No, no.
He has no children.
No, he's the youngest brother of my father, and he got married. I remember when we used to live in Mexico, we got an invitation for his wedding. It was about in 1942 or something. And then
So how did you lose touch with him if you knew he was alive in 42?
we didn't know. It was in 42, maybe it was before, because he was in a concentration camp.
But wait a minute, he got married in 42, but you didn't know he got married in 42?
We received an invitation maybe before. I don't recall exactly the date, but we received an invitation telling us about his wedding to his first wife. After that, they went to the concentration camps, and I think they killed the first wife.
Oh, so you got a notice in Mexico that he was getting married in Europe.
Yes,
I always
yes.
thought he was in Calgary.
Oh, no. He came to
Oh,
Calgary
later.
after they left the concentration camps through, I don't know why he went to Calgary. Maybe an organization helped him or something. My father, when he knew about him, he tried to prepare papers for him to come to Mexico. And one macher, I even remember he prepared papers, took a long time. He charged him 7,000 pesos. At that time was a big chunk of money. And it was a fraud. Because after he came with a bunch of papers, a couple of days later, he said that he needed papers because some signatures are not right and they need to fix them. He picked up the papers and he left. And he never...
A Jewish man?
No, it wasn't a Jew. And from that time, he couldn't do anything else. Maybe he didn't have the money to do it. There was a lot of money. So he went to Canada.
So how did you establish communication with him? He looked you up or you found him?
No, he looked him up. He looked at my father. He
You
knew
remember
that we were
he
in
had-
Mexico.
So he called or he wrote a letter? Or?
Well, this I don't know. Maybe through the community, maybe through the Keila in Mexico, because there was no communication during all these years.
Mm-hmm.
My father had a funny relationship with his family. He never, after the mother died, which was very young. You remember maybe the pictures there at Fanny's home. Well, next time when you go to Mexico, there are copies of these pictures, like big ones, in the room where I sleep all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Is a picture of my grandmother and a picture of my grandfather. The grandmother passed away very young. She had asthma. And I remember my father had this place in the market, like a booth with a lot of merchandise. Sergio has a picture of this place. My father and my mother was reading this American Jewish paper, the Tog.
Mm-hmm.
and you can see all the merchandise that they had.
Is that on the
sale.
telephone?
Yes.
I remember that.
You have
picture.
seen this
I've seen
picture.
that
Well,
picture.
at that time, I remember my grandmother passed away. They received a letter from Russia. And this was when my father had the big place in the market, and we had a very nice home. I told you, the two-story home. After that, we went down. But this was like the best times, what I remember.
Okay, so wait, we're jumping around, Babi. Okay, so Zeta had many brothers, two that we think were alive,
Yes.
one we know for sure.
Yes.
Okay. He had no sisters?
One sister.
Okay, so when Zeta moved to Mexico,
Why he moved to Mexico?
yeah,
Because I've shown you many times this paper that I have here from when they bought they used to call the ship's cartel, like the permit to take the ship from Europe to the United States, with letters from my uncles showing that they are going to take care of us. They were not going to be a problem for the American government. But at that time, they closed the quota in the United States, 1924.
but so when Babi and Zeta moved, they left their family behind.
Yes.
In
in
Russia.
In Gomel, yes.
So he left behind who? His father.
His father,
mother?
his mother, and the brothers, and the sister.
And Babi left behind.
Babi, nobody, because my grandmother came with us to Mexico. My mother's mother came with us to Mexico. That's why in Gomel she divorced her husband, Rabbi Eliashev. He went to Palestine, and she came with our family to Mexico.
Why didn't she go to Palestine?
Because she didn't want to leave her daughter, was the only daughter.
So she gave up. So
She gave up her husband.
wouldn't that be contrary to Jewish law? Shouldn't you follow your husband?
Well, remember
Since
that.
you really didn't love him.
Well, this was not exactly a first marriage. They got married already, they were old, I bet, I don't know. They got married in Lithuania, and they all went to Gomel. My mother, their father, her mother, and then a daughter with the son of the Rabbi Eliashev. They all were in Gomel, in Lithuania. They went to Gomel. From Gomel, the Eliashev family moved to Palestine because Rabbi Eliashev had already daughters in Palestine.
Babi's stepsisters.
No, they were not the stepsisters. Well, yes, you're right. Because they were daughters of their stepfather. Yes, they lived in Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my Babi Shane, my mother's mother, wanted to be near their sons. She had two sons already in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Joseph and Uncle Sidney Zelig.
So let's talk about Babi's family. She had how many brothers
Two brothers.
and no sisters?
No, she had a little sister, but the sister passed away in Europe
As a child.
as a child. Yes.
Okay, so Babi's brothers, they moved to the United States. They immigrated to the United States as single men.
As single men, they were young boys before the First World War.
How old were they roughly?
Well, let's say 13 and 12 or 13 and 14, something very young, before the First World War.
And who met them in the United States?
They had family. As a matter of fact, they left Lithuania together, but they went through London. And they had like a quarantine there, and my Uncle Joseph, the oldest brother, had some problem with his eyes. So they stopped him, he couldn't leave. So the youngest one, Sidney, he left by himself and he went to New York.
So what happened to the brother in London?
He was there for a year.
A year?
After a
And
year,
He lived with who?
I don't know. Maybe some kind of organization that was taking care of the...
What was wrong with his eyes?
They said he had trachoma. I don't know if it was just, or maybe it was an irritation or whatever. They wanted to make sure that everything is clear. So he was there for a year. In the meantime, Uncle Sidney came to New York, and my grandmother, Shane, had a cousin. The cousin was my Aunt Riva's mother. You remember Aunt Riva in New York? You remember we went to their home?
Yeah.
Well, her mother, Aunt Riva's mother, was a cousin to my grandmother. So when he came to New York, he went to live with them. And from then on, he stood there. They sent him to school. He went even to college at that time. And he got married to Aunt Riva. They were rich people at that time.
And the other brother?
The other brother came, but they met him there, and then he went to Chicago. In Chicago, my grandmother had sisters. At the beginning, my uncle Sidney was not living in New York. He was living in Chicago. The factory was in Chicago. So he came to New York. From New York, he went to Chicago. The Perelman family, my Aunt Riva's family, was living also in Chicago. In Chicago, my grandmother, she had two sisters. One was married to Rabbi Sachs, and the other was married to somebody named Frank. Rabbi Sachs is the one that Sergio carries his name, Shaul Sachs. Was a very well-known rabbi in Chicago. So this was an uncle of my mother. The other aunt, after a couple of years, she moved to Los Angeles. She never had children, but she adopted a girl. And this girl got married to somebody named Schwartz in Los Angeles. And this is what I know. When we married, we went to Los Angeles, and I met her. She invited us to an Italian restaurant, I remember. And the other one, the other sister of my grandmother, she had two children, Libe, and another man that also passed away already, also Rabbi Sachs. And of course, they have children and grandchildren. But my parents couldn't come to the United States because of the quota, so when they went to Mexico. A couple of months later, my uncles went to Mexico, and they brought to the United States my grandmother. She came. She could come because she was a mother to children, but otherwise the rest couldn't come. So that's why we were in Mexico.
Because you had made an attempt to get into the United States, that there was a quota, and
Yeah,
we couldn't get in either.
No, well, this was later, but I mean the beginning was closed, completely closed. No.
Except for mothers
The
and children?
yes, she came to, and she went to Chicago, and she lived with Uncle Joseph, or sometimes with Uncle Sidney. After the problems with the monetary problems in 1932, as a lot of businesses went broke, but the Perelman's business was solid, so they opened a branch in New York. That's why Uncle Sidney went to New York to take care of the branch in New York. They had a branch in New York, a branch in Los Angeles, a branch in Holland. It was a big, big business. So what else do you want to know?
So tell me about your life as a child.
My life as a child was not exciting because we didn't have a lot of money, but I was happy because my mother was a very sweet lady, always trying to help us and be with us. And she, as far as I remember, was the best mother I could have.
She was a good cook?
A wonderful cook. A wonderful
So when you went to school, Babi, did you ride, was there buses and you rode a bus, or you walked across the street?
I started first in Tacubaya in a regular school, and then my brother Label and myself, we went to the Jewish school at that time in San Lorenzo, and we used to live in Tacubaya. At that time, a bus came to pick us up, was far away. And I finished grammar school in the Jewish school. After that, we had no money, so I started junior high in a regular school, and from this I went to the preparatoria and then to the professional school.
So when you went to regular school, did you lose touch with Jewish children?
No,
There were Jewish children also in the
not
public.
too many. In my junior high, Zabludovsky's brother was my classmate, the older one, Abram Zabludovsky. Now is one of the highest paid architects in Mexico, Abram Zabludovsky. He went at the same
But I
time.
mean, other than one person, it was basically like
Yes,
Mexicans.
Mexicans, yes.
So you lost touch. There was like you didn't see any Jewish children except
Well, I used to see
was there
them.
Hebrew school back?
No, no Hebrew school.
Sunday school?
They had the Jewish schools, but you needed to pay, so I didn't attend them. But I remember my classmates from grammar school. Yeah.
So you really never saw them again.
Yes, because we used to go to the synagogue. When we lived in Tacubaya, we used to go to a synagogue not exactly a building like here, houses that they adapted. And for Yom Tov, like for the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, they used to take us to a hotel downtown and then attend like a larger place where they had these services. And but I continue getting in touch sometimes with the different Jewish children, and sometimes they had like festivities for different Yom Tovim or for Israel, but it's not exactly the same thing like attending the Jewish school where everybody is Jewish. No, it was not.
And so tell me again about when you earned those little medals for running track.
Well, I used to I always have been a little bit of the sports side, so I used to go for contests.
This was in elementary school?
In junior high or high, we used to, they had a once a year, twice a year contest of running, of volleyball, of different sports. And I participate.
You won track.
Well, sometimes, yes.
So you were pretty fast.
And then in high school, I used to play the drums.
You played the drums, Babi?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And when they had these
Parades?
I used to
You'd be the drummer?
the drummer.
So
yeah.
they didn't pay for drumming lessons?
No, they didn't never pay for anything. They used to give me $10 a week, 10 pesos a week. And this was for everything, including bus fare.
So you had to figure out how much you had left over.
Nothing. Yeah, well, my father used to say that girls don't need to go to school. What can you do?
So then, Babi, you finished high school and then you decided to go to college?
Yes.
But when you went to college, you were really going to be an accountant, no?
Yes, I wanted to go, but this school was, you need to pay, like 50 pesos a month or something.
To be an accountant?
Was a private school.
Oh, it wasn't UNAM?
No.
UNAM didn't have account?
No, they like specialty. I don't remember. They had for lawyers, for different careers, but I don't remember accounting. Maybe they had. Maybe I wanted to go to this particular place. This school was sponsored by the banks. The name was Escuela Bancaria and Comercial. Was the best at that time in the city. Well, was no money. What could you do?
So as a second choice, you decided to go into chemistry?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you were good. You could. That just seems so different. Money or
Well,
chemistry.
no, because the basis is math. So, what do you do if you don't have any choice? You take it.
Okay, so you got your papelito.
Yeah.
And then you went just working where?
Well, I went to the United States for a couple of months.
Directly after you finished?
After I graduated, I went to New York. Then I went to Chicago.
So what did you do in New York? You worked?
No, in New York was just for a month.
To do what?
Nothing.
Just
Just
relax?
relaxing. I went with Riva to different places. And then I went to Chicago, and in Chicago I started.
Wait, you went there to look for boys, or what?
No, I wanted to go out from the city for a little bit. No.
She didn't introduce you to anybody over there?
Yes, I had one of Aunt Riva's nephews that later he passed away of cancer in his throat, pobrecito. Then I went to school for, now I recall it's maybe like a half a semester in summertime. How do you call it? It's
For what? Where?
at the University of Chicago.
No, you were in New York, man. How'd you get
No,
to Chicago?
I went, I took a train.
What happened to New York? You just went there to
Just
relax?
for, yes, for a month, not too long. Then I went to Chicago and I was living with Uncle Yossi in his home. And I remember I took to take the L, the elevator, they call it the L.
The elevator was called the L?
L. Mm-hmm.
The elevator where?
To go from Uncle Joseph's home to the hospital where I used to work, my Clarice,
What do
or
you mean the L? The elevator, what is an elevator?
it's like a train.
Oh, it's called the elevator was the train.
Yeah,
Oh, because it was above ground.
yes. Above ground, the outside the city, and then he went inside.
How'd you get that job?
My Aunt Riva's brother was a lawyer. He was the youngest of the Perlman. He didn't work in the factory, and he had acquaintances at the Mike Clarice, one of the largest hospitals in Chicago. And I worked in the blood bank. They used to separate the serum from blood, and then prepare these antigens to type blood, and what they used to do at that time. Yeah.
So you worked there how long?
Well, I went back to Mexico, was in October, so let's say I came maybe for about 2 months or something.
But you knew it was only going to be for a short time?
Yes,
And they knew that too?
yes, of course. But they gave me the job because I was recommended. Otherwise, I could not.
So you lived
With my uncle,
your uncle,
Uncle Joseph. Uncle Joe, they used to call
Uncle
him.
Joe.
Uncle Joe.
Okay. So then that's where you bought that little outfit, a little small square, little checkered
Yes.
checkered outfit.
No, these outfits, I bought the outfit in New York. When I went to Chicago, Uncle Jose had an acquaintance in Chicago. I think till today, I think the largest merchandise mart in the United States, downtown Chicago. And he had an acquaintance that used to manufacture ladies' suits.
Oh, yeah.
And I bought 2 suits. One was red with squares, and the other one was gray with a little fur. And in New York, I bought the one with the. I think there is a picture with this suit, muy bonito suit.
So you the job that you had was temporary, and
Yeah.
you knew it and they knew it.
Sure, of course.
And so the money you earned, you spent on yourself lavishly.
Yeah, I bought these books that I have here. I remember I went to State Street. There was a library there, a bookstore, not library.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought these books, my first new books I have from all my career, because usually I borrow books or I bought them used. So these were new. I have my books there, yeah.
What about like extended family? Tell us what you know about your extended family.
Well, my uncle Joe has a daughter and a son. And the daughter's name is Betty Wasserman. She lives in Chicago. And their son is Laurie Barritz. And he is the provost. He's like a dean. I think he's in Rochester College or Rochester University or something like that.
There's the University of Rochester.
Yeah, might be. And then my uncle Sidney has 2 sons. One lives in New York, the other one lives in Chicago.
Remember their names?
The names is Lenny and Elliot.
And so I met
Elliot
Elliot that lives in Chicago.
in New York.
No, who?
You met Lenny.
I met Lenny, who lives in Chicago.
And you met Elliot. You remember when we went for your
No.
checkup a long time
I'm
ago?
talking about like
Now.
2 summers ago. Already.
Yes, this is Lenny,
Lenny.
and they have sons. I think Lenny has 4 sons, and Elliot has 2 sons and an adopted daughter or something. That's all I know.
Okay.
What else do you want to know? When I went back to Mexico, I looked for a job and I started to work in a clinical lab. But I didn't like it because it was like routine, every day the same thing. So when I saw in a paper they were looking for somebody at Syntex, I applied and I got the job. That's all.
So that's all. So talk to us about your job at Syntex, buddy.
Well, was very interesting job. Was research and quality control of the material. And I met very interesting people. Between them, Dr. Gerasi and Dr. Rosenkrantz, they were my bosses. When I got married, I stopped. Unfortunately.